I predict in the future, the Gen Xs and millennials of today, 90 won't be the new 40. That'll just be what 90 is. So many years from now, it will expect people to still be, kicking butt and taking names at that age. And that's because I look at the super ages as kind of the pioneers going through the jungle with the machete, carving out the pathway that will become the super highway of the future when super aging is the norm.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. I'm Miriam Goodman.
Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village SF, a local nonprofit providing older adults in the Northeast neighborhood of San Francisco with support to help age in place. I'm Lynn Winter-Gross.
If you've been following the news lately, you may have noticed that aging has become a big topic. Not only are we told we can live to be 100, we're also feeling that we are actually valuable. Here at Not Born Yesterday, we're quite aware that many institutions like medicine, advertising, higher education, or banking have ignored the aging population for years. But it seems like suddenly everyone wants to embrace us. So today we want to celebrate older adults with the authors of a new book which challenges the old idea of aging and honors what can be a productive and fulfilling time of life. In fact, they believe we can lead a revolution and that will transform every part of society.
David Cravit was an executive in a Canadian media company that specializes in covering the older market. He's also a commentator on aging and trends about growing older, and he's co-author of Super Aging, Getting Older Without Getting Old. His co-author, Larry Wolf, is an expert in product branding and marketing communications. Mr. Wolf says we can brand aging in itself to make our later years creative and transformative. David and Larry, welcome to Not Born Yesterday.
Yes, thanks for inviting us.
So since words and titles are so important, let's begin by hearing your definition of super aging. To many people, super aging means the image of a 90-year-old climbing Mount Everest or jumping out of an airplane. These people may inspire some, but they also make others feel like losers. Is that what you mean when you use the term?
Let me start that, and I'll throw to Larry in a minute. No, we don't mean that. But what we do mean is fulfillment, accomplishment, achievement in your later years rather than retreat and, playing defense. And the old model, which we talk about, we call it default aging, was when you're 65, you're on defense, you don't have much longer to go. You're not going to be around much longer. So trying anything new and different and looking ahead is pointless. Now a 65-year-old might have 20, 30 years or even more. What are you going to do at that time? It can be a dynamic, positive time of your life. Obviously, running a marathon or jumping on an airplane is dramatic and newsworthy, but it doesn't need to be that extreme. But it does mean you're in charge and you've got stuff you want to do and time to do it.
Yeah, what we tried to do with Super Aging really is to give people a guidebook, a how to do it book, on how to make your 70s, your 80s, 90s, and beyond really some of the best years of your life. With a change in attitude and with an awareness of what we call the 7 essentials of super aging, you don't have to look at aging as a period of decline of growing old. You can grow older without going old. So we tried to give you a guidebook. What do you do to have a great life, to enjoy hell out of life as you age? And make your 70s, 80s, 90s, your 100s, some of the most fulfilling years of your life. There's no mystery. What we're suggesting that people do is easy. It's backed up by tons of expert research, and anyone can do it. I mean, you don't have to jump out of airplanes or be a super athlete. It's easy to change your life. You just need to focus on it.
Before we get into discussing the A's that you discussed in your book, the 7 A's, I want to ask you about our current political environment and how aging is a major topic. I assume you've seen the cover of the New Yorker magazine with the four.
I had, yeah, yeah.
They're all pushing the wheelchair, all pushing walkers, which none of them need to use. And now our current president has talked about all the time in terms of his age, and he's too old. Where does all that fit in?
Yes, we have to be realistic. And outside of the world of politics, there are people who are old in the traditional meaning of old at 65 or 70. The trick is, though, to treat it objectively and not age-based, but performance-based, the same way as if you like a certain senator who's 55, the reasons you like him or her is A, B, C, D, E. The reasons you don't like him or her is A, B, C, D, E. And their age doesn't need to be a factor. Obviously, the older you get, the longer it becomes a factor. We can't hide that. But I think that it's got to become objective and not, there's no magic, to the age. What I'm worried about more, to be honest with you, and this is not party politics, but it is politics, is that the idea that the older people are a single generation who all got together in a hotel room one day and decided to screw over every younger generation. And all the problems in the world are because of the greedy boomers and the greedy seniors. And why are we clogging up the job market? Why won't we get out of the way? Why won't we sell our houses and give somebody else a chance? That to me is more insidious than looking at an elderly politician. And I think that's where some of the real danger lies, because it's sweeping, it's generational, and it's very unfair.
Well, David, I know that, you've written about the baby boomers in the past, and I just wonder if you think the fact that this is now the generation of baby boomers getting older has any effect on the attitudes about aging, both from us and from the outside world, and if there's something that we can do that's more that will change those attitudes you just mentioned.
There's a lot of intergenerational jealousy and finger pointing. And I think the boomers suffer because the true story of our generation has not been told. We, in fact, are supporting many of these younger groups still that are struggling economically. And I wish we could get rid of that rivalry. But the problem might solve itself, because the good news is that the Gen X is already well into their 50s, and the oldest millennial will be pushing late 40s, early 50s in 10 years, and then they'll see what it's like. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And if you want to talk about ageism, right now we're facing ageism in our 70s and 80s. They're going to be living to 100, 110, 120. What's it going to be like for them when they have a large and angry younger generation coming in behind them? So part of this is just the way humanity rolls, I guess.
So in your book, you coined the 7 A's of aging, with attitude being one of the most important. And on our podcast, we often talk about attitude and how too many of us internalize a vision of ourselves as old, which holds us back from trying new things. So how do we change our attitudes so that we can take that first step to become a super ager?
Go ahead, Larry.
Well, there's a lot of very practical ways that you can do this. I mean, first, you have to convince yourself that you can age well. Secondly, that you can do it. And when you read our chapter in attitude, which I think is so important, because it really overrides, it underlines everything. Having the right attitude makes everything else possible.
Two things I want to add. First of all, if I came to you and said generally, without our book, without any book, that it's better to be an optimist than a pessimist, that sort of intuitively sounds right. I wouldn't get much pushback on that. But they've now done research, and we cite some of it in our book, to trace the biological effects of positivity, that it can add more years to your life. And they've traced it all the way down almost to the cellular level, that people with a positive attitude have less stress, and it actually biologically can increase your lifespan. And I think just being aware of that can help. The second point I want to make is that very much tied up with attitude, because I don't want to create the impression that you're just sitting there thinking positive thoughts, but very much tied up with attitude is purpose. Having something you want to do, having a goal, having a set of plans. They don't need to be profound. But if you, we had a mayor here in Toronto, one of the big suburbs, named Hazel McCallion. She passed away last year at 102. She was still playing in a ladies ice hockey league at 90. But when asked the secret of her longevity, and she was a pistol, she said, every day I wake up with a whole bunch of stuff I want to do. So it wasn't just an abstract, oh, I better feel positive today. It was, I got stuff to do. I got tangible, concrete things that I want to do and that are making me excited. And I think that's part of the key to the whole piece.
I think two of the things that you just talked about that I found most interesting is how attitude can affect your physical brain health. I thought, really? It can really affect me physically. That was something I didn't know before. And found that very fascinating. And the other thing is, when you talk about attitude, is write down what you want to do. You can't just say, well, tomorrow I'm going to do ABC, but actually sit down and answer the questions in your book and write down a plan. Put it on paper.
Put it on paper.
Absolutely.
Put it on paper, because you don't have time to to wallow, I guess, is where you don't have time to feel sorry for yourself. Now, look, there's a big asterisk through all of this, all of it. I'm sure all of your podcasts that you've done, there are individuals who are in unfortunate circumstances, and I don't want to be glib about that. But for the average person, if you've got plans, if you say, of course I'm going to live longer because I got to get this done. So attitude and intent to do stuff kind of go hand. It's almost like a function of attitude. So it makes attitude concrete and not abstract.
One of the things that you also talked about that I thought with making a list of things is staying on top, being aware of medical discoveries, and look at what pills you're taking, look at what your doctor's talking about. Don't just go into the doctor with the old-fashioned way of, okay, I'm here for my annual checkup, or I'm here because I have a cold. You tell me what to do. You talk about being very proactive in this field. Get online, do some research, find out what issues you may have, find out what new medicines are there. Don't just rely on your doctor. That's a new model for me.
No, absolutely. It's very, very critical to take charge of your own health care. One of the great things about being alive today is just so many extraordinary things are happening with medical research. So much is going on. David did, an extraordinarily interesting video that's on our YouTube channel about what you should consider in evaluating your doctor, the 10 things you should look at. Because what we're suggesting, that just like you're a consumer in any other way, you're a consumer of healthcare, of medicine, not just a passive recipient, of what your doctor says. And critically, the whole orientation of medicine, in our view, should be wellness, not treating you after you're sick, but really keeping you from getting sick, and and doing all the analytical stuff, and having the orientation, and doing all the proper tests.
Part of being a super ager is the actual range of topics you need to be keeping an eye on. I don't mean become an expert, but is way bigger than ever before. And so in addition to health, there's technology. What do you know about AI? What do you know about robotics? Do you know that robots are going to be the key to aging in place? What do you know about new financial strategies? Where are you going to get the money to last you 30 years if you're living that long past the age of 65? So the range of subjects you need to at least have a nodding acquaintance with, I'm not saying be a master, but is much bigger. And that's why the second A of our 7 A's is awareness.
Well, you were mentioning health. There are so many older adults who use the excuse of maybe declining health as a reason not to try some of these things, or not to travel, or not to seek new relationships, even if their health is fine right now. So maybe we have to concentrate more on mental health in determining how much we can thrive as we age.
Which plays back, you're right, which plays back into attitude, but it also plays into knowledge. Like, how much are you not doing because you're just not aware of it? Larry and I had occasion, what was it, in September, I think, Larry, when Grandparents' Day, to prepare some articles about grandparenting. And we've discovered a whole bunch of new trends in the wonderful world of grandparenting, including in travel. Skip Gen travel. Have you heard of Skip Gen travel? Grandparent and grandkids go on a trip together and the parents stay home. Well, if you didn't know about this, if you didn't realize that there's websites that can give you 500 ideas for a Skip Gen trip, you might never even approach it. So that's what I mean by widening your horizon, so that you kind of know what it is you're turning down. You know what I mean? You know, the menu is so much more rich now, and you just got to be aware of what's out there for you.
When you talk about different living arrangements and you talk about people staying at home longer, which you mentioned, and how we're going to use robotics more in the house, what does that mean? And how do you see that as you use the term the hospitals of the future? Our houses are going to become the hospital of the future. What does that mean?
What we're saying here is they're really talking about post-operative care for non-life. They're not going to perform open heart surgery in your living room. But when you think of how much post-operative care today for our generation relates to mobility, whether it's hip replacement or orthopedics or not minor, but ailments that where you can recover, even if it's cardio stuff. Instead of being in a ward in the hospital, they can send you home and monitor you remotely with some of the new technology, passive monitoring, analyzed automatically by AI in real time. So you're at home, and all these vital readouts that they would normally be walking up and down the hall in the hospital and taking your temperature and your blood pressure and all this stuff. Why do you need to be in the ward? You can be back at home, and they can get that information in real time. This is just beginning, but it's definitely the future, because it's going to lower costs, it's going to improve outcomes, and the technology is already there.
Can you give us some examples of how super agers have already changed society?
The big one that I would start with is the absolute end of the word retirement as we know it. So the automatic nature of, hey, you're 65, the stroke of midnight, here's your gold watch, here's your cake and surprise, farewell party, you're now a retiree. And that used to be the traditional threshold of old. You're 65, so you're now old. Well, now, for a combination of reasons, number one, we talked about attitude and accomplishment, and there's stuff I want to do, and I'm go, and that's one reason. The second reason is finance. I can't afford to stop working at 65 because I haven't got enough money to last me 20 more years. It was okay when I was only going to last 10 more years, but if I'm going to last 25 more years, where am I going to get the money? I got to keep working. Either they're not retiring at all, or they're retiring and coming back part-time, or they're retiring but they still got a little side gig or something, but they're staying in the workforce and earning money. And that is the first big trend that I think is absolutely pervasive.
And it's interesting, there's all sorts of research that indicates accomplishment is a key ingredient of living longer. As you mentioned, as David mentioned, as you age, purpose is absolutely critical. You have to have a reason to get up in the morning. You have to have something you want to accomplish, something you love doing. Now, it doesn't have to be your initial career. You can volunteer. You can go back to school. You can start a new career doing something else, but you have to keep accomplishing, never stop learning. You can never stop having new experiences, because when you stop learning and stop medically expanding, it's like physical exercise. You either have ongoing mental exercise or you decline mentally. The same physically, you move it or you lose it.
Your book gives some good examples of how to find what your purpose could be. How do you really evaluate what it is that you like doing? And because we've talked about this for 2 years in our podcast of finding purpose. And when people lose their purpose and their structure and their community, it's very hard to keep going in a positive way.
We recognize that the term silver tsunami is pejorative because it makes it sound like the older people are an unexpected burden on society. Like you don't know when the tsunami is coming. But shouldn't doctors and sociologists and all these other research experts on aging have known that the baby boomers were aging and something would have to be done?
Your question, not you, but society, betrays a certain change in the model, which is the super agers are doing it anyway. So the idea of, the old idea, again, in default, the golden years, well, you're in the golden years, so you're in the twilight of your life. It's time to settle back into that rocking chair and take it easy, which was the default aging model. So the senior citizens were seen as, even the wealthiest ones, kind of dependent on whatever society served up to them out of the goodness of society's heart. And I'm not suggesting that that's a bad motive, but the idea, you've worked hard all your life, you've made these contributions, now sit back, have a gentle glide back to the finish line, and we'll take care of you, or Social Security will take care of you. Or there's this kind of little mini prize you've won, and now you can relax before the end. But what's happening is that the tsunami, it's the right word, is precisely because the super agers are not behaving as if they were dependent on the kindness of strangers, to coin a phrase. They're taking charge of their own destinies, and they're reinventing the whole concept of what it means to be that age. And I predict in the future, the Gen X's and millennials of today, 90 won't be the new 40. That'll just be what 90 is. So many years from now, it will expect people to still be, kicking butt and taking names at that age. And that's because I look at the super agers as kind of the pioneers going through the jungle with the machete, carving out the pathway that will become the super highway of the future when super aging is the norm.
Thank you both so much for sharing your thoughts and your information with us today. Our guests were David Cravit and Larry Wolf, authors of Super Aging, Getting Older Without Getting Old.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Now that we're all inspired to grow older without getting old, on News You Can Use today, we want to encourage you to create a bucket list. If you don't know what that is, you may recall that about 15 years ago, there was a hit movie called The Bucket List, starring Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson. In the film, the two men who are strangers share a hospital room and leave it to begin a journey of all the things they want to do before they kick the bucket. While your personal list may not include seeing the Taj Mahal or skydiving, it's never too early to create a list of your dreams and goals.
First, remember, it's a list. It's a list you make for yourself. You can put things on it that you can't possibly afford, or wishes or dreams that you might not ever achieve. But none of the things will happen if you don't write them down and begin to make a plan. You don't have to share the list with anyone, but like the characters in the film, you may find that one by one, you start to cross items off your list.
Keep in mind that it's okay to be selfish in making your list. Perhaps you always wanted to climb a famous mountain or ride a motorcycle, but family responsibilities and the fear of failure held you back. Think of what you might do if you have no commitments and no one to tell you what a crazy idea it is. It is perfectly acceptable to be self-centered as you age.
And remember, it's just a list. It's open to additions, deletions, and changes of all kind. Include items that cost nothing but are priceless, like making a baby laugh or helping a stranger. Try to include things that today may seem impossible, but could possibly happen anyway. Don't worry about the cost right now or the what ifs. Just do it and let us know when you check off the first one off your list. And that's our podcast for today. Our thanks go to our guests, David Cravit and Larry Wolf, authors of Super Aging, Getting Older Without Getting Old. You can learn more about Next Village SF at their website, nextvillagesf.org. Our theme music is from Hook Sounds, and Jason Dahlstedt is our engineer. And we thank you for listening. We'd love to hear what you would like us to discover and discuss. Please contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast.org and follow us on Facebook. Tell your friends about the podcast and encourage them to be as informed as you are. Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.